Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Monday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. And hope you had an absolutely fantastic weekend. I woke up this morning and boy, the allergy stuff was just raging. I've already had a couple of bad coughing spells here in the office. I've had to use my respirator. Yeah, allergies are pretty bad. But glad to be with you. We are continuing our study of the resurrection from the perspective and the relationship of suffering and martyrdom and resurrection. Do this because Paul discusses resurrection in 1 Corinthians 15, and he mentions his suffering for the cause of Christ. Likewise, Romans chapter 8, Paul said, I reckon that the suffering of this present time is not worthy to be compared with the glory that is about to be revealed. What was that glory? It was the consummation of the adoption that had already begun, and Paul called that glory, that adoption, the, quote, redemption of the body, Romans 8:23. So, in both 1 Corinthians 15 and Romans 8, we have Paul the Apostle putting suffering and martyrdom and resurrection in the same identical context. Throughout the New Testament, we find this motif of first century suffering, first century martyrdom. A host of words are used to describe it. Pathemata or thalipsis or other words that are used, to describe the then ongoing persecution of the church, but the promise of the imminent coming of the Lord, the imminent judgment, and the imminent resurrection to give them relief, vindication, glorification, and resurrection. We've been looking at Revelation. No other book, honestly, ties suffering and martyrdom together with the day of the Lord, the judgment of the persecutors, and the coming resurrection more than does the book of Revelation. Now, very quickly, I want you to notice the following. Revelation 6, the martyrs under the altar crying out for vindication. That day of vindication would be the great day of the Lord. Revelation 6, verses 9 to 17. Revelation chapter 12, the saints being persecuted by the adversary, the accuser, the devil, who only had a short time to accomplish his purposes until he would be destroyed. That is, Satan's destruction is the day of the Lord prayed for by the saints in Revelation 6. By the way, this is widely recognized in the commentaries. This is not something new. This is not a preterist twist on Revelation. Critical scholars have recognized this connection, this interconnection between Revelation 6, Revelation chapter 12, for centuries. Now watch. Revelation chapter 6, the martyrs, they're waiting on vindication, but they only have to wait for a little while until their fellow brethren, who should be slain as they were, should be filled up. Then the great day of the Lord, the judgment on their persecutors. Revelation chapter 12, once again, Satan is the great persecutor chasing the saints. He is extremely angry because he knows he has only a little while until his judgment. Revelation chapter 17. Babylon, the great harlot, is holding a cup full of the blood of the martyrs and of the saints and the followers of Jesus. Judgment is declared on her, and it's coming in a very little while. The question, of course, is, who is Babylon? Follow with me very closely as I share some incredible thoughts with you. In Matthew, we find the reality that it was Old Covenant Israel, Judah, Jerusalem that had killed the Old Covenant prophets. Matthew 21, Matthew 22, Matthew chapter 23. Jesus said, "Which of the prophets have you not slain?" Speaking to the Jews in Jerusalem. So Old Covenant Israel had killed the prophets. Point number 2, Old Covenant Jerusalem was going to kill Jesus. Matthew chapter 23, the parable of the vineyard and the wicked husbandman. The son was sent to them, they killed him. Point number 3, Jerusalem was going to kill Jesus' apostles, prophets, wise men, and scribes. Matthew 23, 36 and following, or 34 and following, excuse me. So it was Jerusalem that had killed the prophets. They were going to kill Jesus. They were going to kill Jesus' apostles and prophets. In so doing, they were going to fill up the measure of their father's guilt. And Jesus said, that generation, his generation, not some generation in our future, but his generation would be judged and destroyed in that generation. Now watch this. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, the Apostle Paul said the Jews had killed the prophets. They had now slain Jesus. And they were killing the apostles and the prophets of Jesus. Sound familiar? Well, of course it does. It's following the words of Jesus in Matthew. And Paul said they do fill up the measure of their sin always. Sound familiar? That's what Jesus said Israel would do by persecuting his followers in that generation. And wrath has come upon them to the uttermost. The image here is of a huge tottering boulder sitting on the edge of a cliff, and there's somebody down here, and it's going to fall and smash them. That's how imminent that judgment was. So we have Jesus identifying Jerusalem as the city that killed the prophets. They were going to kill him. They were going to kill his apostles and prophets, fill up the measure of their sin, be judged in that generation. We have Paul saying that it was Old Covenant Jerusalem and Judea that had killed the prophets. They've now killed Jesus. They're killing Jesus' apostles and prophets. They're filling up the measure of their sin, and judgment was about to fall on them. Would anybody suggest that Paul's talking about anyone different from what Jesus talked about, i.e. Old Covenant Jerusalem? Not hardly. Now watch this. You've got to catch the power of this. In the book of Revelation chapter 16, verse 6, Old Covenant Babylon is the city that had killed the prophets. Number 2, it is, quote, where the Lord was slain, unquote, Revelation 11, verse 8. Is there any question about where Jesus was slain? Really? Do we have any question about that? So Babylon had killed the prophets. They killed Jesus. Revelation 18, 20 and 21, in her was found all of the blood of all of the righteous shed on the earth. Let's see. Who did Jesus say had slain all of the blood of all the righteous shed on the earth? Matthew 23. It was Jerusalem. But wait, we're not through. Catch the power of this. John was told, Revelation chapter 20, verse 24, that Babylon was killing the apostles and the prophets of Jesus. Her cup was now full of the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. She is killing the apostles and prophets. Her cup is full. What's going to happen? Well, Jesus said what's going to happen. Behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me. These things must shortly come to pass. Now look, folks, let me ask you this question. Since it was Old Covenant Jerusalem guilty of killing the prophets, Jesus and Jesus' apostles and prophets, according to Jesus and according to Paul, and in both Jesus and Paul identified Jerusalem as that city who was filling up the measure of her sin and would be judged in that generation. Then since John identified, i.e. Babylon, as the city guilty of killing the prophets, guilty of killing Jesus, guilty of killing the apostles and prophets of Jesus, filling up the measure of her sin, and was about to be judged at the coming of the Lord, Revelation 19, how in the world, I ask this as kindly and as respectfully as possible, but how in the world can we identify Babylon of Revelation as any other city than Old Covenant Jerusalem? And that means that since all of the blood of all of the righteous, all the way back to creation, was going to be avenged at the resurrection, Romans 8, 1 Corinthians 15, then since that avenging is put at the day of the Lord and at the judgment, at the fall of Babylon, i.e. Jerusalem, that means the resurrection occurred at the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70. Look, I developed this extensively, a whole lot more information in my book, Who is This Babylon? Go to my website, donkpreston.com, bibleprophecy.com, and order the book. Be sure to send me a note telling me you saw the offer on YouTube or Facebook, and I'll refund your shipping, okay? Boy, we've got more. But really, honestly, I don't know how we can avoid the fact that all of the blood of all of the martyrs would be avenged at the day of the resurrection and the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70. We'll see you on the flip side with more.